A flight attendant I had never met slipped a folded note into my hand and whispered 4 words that made no sense. "Pretend you're sick now." I thought she was crazy. I ignored her. 30 minutes later, I understood that she had been trying to save my life, and the man sitting 3 inches away from me was the reason why. Subscribe for more stories and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. My name is Brooke, and this is the story of how a stranger's desperate warning helped me escape a nightmare I didn't even know I was trapped in. I was 24 years old and finally living the life I had always dreamed about. 2 years out of nursing school, working at a hospital in Seattle, saving every extra dollar I could. My parents, Linda and Jean, still lived in the same small Ohio town where I grew up. My younger sister Talia was finishing her last year of college back east. We were a close family, the kind that had a group chat going all day and never let more than a week pass without a phone call. My mom worried about everything. My dad pretended not to worry, but texted me every morning asking if I had eaten breakfast. Talia sent me videos of her cat doing stupid things at 3 in the morning. For 2 years, I had been planning my first real solo trip, Portugal. I had a folder on my phone filled with screenshots of restaurants and hostels and walking tours. I read travel blogs for months. I practiced basic Portuguese phrases in my car on the way to work. When I finally booked the flights, I called my mom and told her it was happening. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Just promise me you'll be careful." I promised. I meant it. The trip started exactly the way I had imagined. I landed in Lisbon on a Tuesday morning, exhausted but excited. The city was beautiful. Cobblestone streets, tile-covered buildings, sunlight bouncing off the river. I spent 3 days wandering through neighborhoods with unpronounceable names, eating custard tarts and taking pictures of everything. I was happy in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. No shifts at the hospital, no alarms going off, no patients coding at 2 in the morning. Just me and a new city, and nothing to do but explore. That's when I met Dominic. He was sitting next to me on a short flight from Lisbon to Porto. I had booked a few days in the north to see the wine region. He was tall, with dark, wavy hair and a warm smile that made him easy to talk to. He said he was a software consultant, traveling around Europe for work, but squeezing in some personal time when he could. We talked through the whole flight, and it felt natural, like catching up with an old friend instead of meeting a stranger. By the time we landed, he had my phone number. He texted me that night asking if I wanted to get coffee the next morning. I said yes. We spent the next week together. He showed me hidden spots in Porto that I never would have found on my own. A tiny bar down a side alley where they played old jazz, records, a rooftop garden with a view of the whole city, a bakery run by an elderly woman who gave us free samples because Dominic charmed her with his broken Portuguese. He was funny and thoughtful and always seemed to know the right thing to say. I felt like I had stumbled into one of those travel romance movies my sister loved. I called Talia one night from my hostel balcony. "You're not going to believe this," I told her. "I met someone." She screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. I told her about the coffee dates and the sunset walks and the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the room. She said I sounded happier than I had in years. She said she couldn't wait to meet him. When Dominic suggested we change our plans and fly to Barcelona together, I didn't even hesitate. He said he had friends there, that he could show me the real city, not the tourist version. I changed my ticket that same afternoon and texted my mom the update. She replied with a string of worried emojis, but ended with, "I love you. Be safe." I told her I would. I boarded that flight to Barcelona feeling like the luckiest woman in the world. I had no idea that the man sitting next to me wasn't who he claimed to be. I had no idea that everything he had told me was a carefully constructed lie. And I had no idea that in less than an hour, a flight attendant would risk her job to warn me about the danger I couldn't see. The flight to Barcelona was supposed to be quick, just under 2 hours. I had the window seat, and Dominic was beside me in the middle. He let me have the window because he knew I liked watching the clouds. That was the kind of thing he did. Small gestures that made me feel seen. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have met someone so thoughtful. We had been in the air for about 20 minutes when it happened. I was flipping through the in-flight magazine, not really reading it, just passing time. A flight attendant came down the aisle, adjusting overhead vents and checking on passengers. She was a woman in her 40s, with short auburn hair and kind eyes. Her name tag said, Renata. She smiled politely at the passengers in the row ahead of us, then stopped beside me. She leaned across to adjust the vent above my seat, and as she did, I felt something press into my palm. A small piece of paper, folded tight. She didn't look at me. She just straightened up, smiled like nothing had happened, and moved on down the aisle. I kept my hand closed around the paper, confused. Dominic was scrolling through his phone beside me, earbuds in, watching something on the screen. He didn't seem to notice anything. I waited a few seconds, then slowly unfolded the note under the magazine so he wouldn't see. The handwriting was rushed, almost messy. It said, "Pretend you're sick. Go to the back bathroom. Now." I read it twice, sure I was misunderstanding. I looked up toward the front of the plane where Renata had gone, but she was out of sight. My first thought was that she had made a mistake. Maybe the note was meant for someone else. Maybe it was some kind of airline protocol I didn't understand. None of it made sense. Dominic pulled out one of his earbuds and glanced over at me. "You okay? You look confused." "I'm fine," I said. "Just a weird article in here." He laughed and went back to his phone. I folded the note and slipped it into the pocket of my hoodie, trying to push it out of my mind. But I couldn't. The words kept repeating in my head. Pretend you're sick. Now. About 10 minutes later, Renata came back with the drink cart. She handed out cups and napkins with a calm, professional smile. But when she reached our row, something changed. Her hands were shaking. Not a lot, but enough that I noticed. She gave Dominic his water first, then leaned over to hand me a ginger ale. As she set the cup on my tray, she knocked over a napkin and bent down to pick it up. Her face came close to my ear, and she whispered so quietly I almost missed it. "Please, I'm begging you. Just trust me." Then she stood up, smiled like nothing had happened, and pushed the cart forward. My heart started pounding. I could feel it in my throat, in my fingertips. I looked at Dominic. He was still watching his phone, completely relaxed. His leg was touching mine. His shoulder brushed against me when he shifted in his seat. He felt so familiar, so safe. But Renata's eyes were burned into my memory. Wide, scared, desperate. That wasn't the face of someone who had made a mistake. That was the face of someone who knew something terrible. I tried to calm myself down. I thought about everything I knew about Dominic. His job as a software consultant, his apartment in London, his favorite restaurant in Lisbon, his sister who lived in Canada. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't actually know any of it. I only knew what he had told me. I had never seen his apartment. I had never talked to his sister. I had never met a single person who could confirm that anything he said was true. 10 days together, and all I really had were his words. I started running through our time together, looking for anything that should have raised a red flag, the way he always seemed to appear wherever I was, the way he suggested changes to my travel plans that just happened to keep me close to him, the way he asked questions about my family, my routines, my work schedule. I had thought he was interested in me. Now I wondered if he was studying me. My stomach twisted. I felt trapped in my seat, pinned between the window and the man I suddenly wasn't sure I knew at all. The plane hummed around me. Passengers laughed and chatted like everything was normal. A baby cried somewhere near the front, and I sat there with a crumpled note in my pocket, trying to decide whether to trust a stranger or the man I had been falling for. I looked toward the back of the plane. The bathroom was there, just a few rows behind us. Renata wanted me to go there. She wanted to tell me something, and the fear in her eyes told me I needed to listen. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, gripping the armrest so hard my knuckles turned white. My mind was spinning in circles, arguing with itself. Part of me wanted to believe this was all a misunderstanding. Dominic had been nothing but kind to me. He had never raised his voice, never made me uncomfortable, never done a single thing that seemed threatening. But another part of me, a quieter voice buried deep in my gut, kept whispering that something was wrong. I thought about my mom. I thought about what she would say if I called her right now and told her a flight attendant was begging me to get away from the man next to me. She would tell me to listen. She would tell me that my safety mattered more than being polite. She would tell me to trust my instincts, even if they didn't make logical sense. I made a decision. I was going to find out what Renata knew. I turned to Dominic and put my hand on my stomach. I don't feel so good, I said. I think I need to use the bathroom. He looked up from his phone with a concerned expression. You okay? Want me to get you some water or something? No, I'll be fine. I just need a minute. He shifted his legs to let me pass. I squeezed out of the row and walked toward the back of the plane on unsteady legs. Every step felt like it took forever. I could feel his eyes on my back, watching me go. I forced myself not to turn around. The bathroom door was closed, so I stood in the small galley area near the back, pretending to wait. My hands were trembling. A moment later, the door opened and an older man stepped out. I slipped inside and locked the door behind me. The space was tiny, barely enough room to turn around. I gripped the edge of the sink and stared at myself in the mirror. My face was pale. My eyes looked scared. I took a deep breath and tried to steady my nerves. A soft knock came at the door. A woman's voice said, "Housekeeping." I recognized the tone immediately. It was Renata. I unlocked the door and opened it just a crack. She glanced down the aisle, then slipped inside with me. There wasn't much room for two people, but she pressed herself against the wall and spoke in a low, urgent voice. "I need you to listen carefully," she said. "I don't have much time." I nodded, too frightened to speak. She told me that when we boarded the plane in Lisbon, she had recognized the man I was traveling with. 2 months ago, her airline had received a security briefing from Interpol about a trafficking network operating across Europe. They targeted young women traveling alone. The method was always the same. A charming man would approach them, build trust over days or weeks, then convince them to travel to a new location. Once isolated, the women would disappear. Renata said Dominic matched the description and photograph from that briefing exactly. Different hair now, different name, but the same face. She had quietly informed the captain, who had contacted authorities in Barcelona. Police would be waiting when we landed. My legs nearly gave out. I grabbed the wall to keep myself upright. I wanted to argue with her. I wanted to say she was wrong, that Dominic wasn't like that there had to be some mistake. But the words wouldn't come. "How do you know for sure?" I finally managed to ask. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to a photo. It was a security image, slightly grainy but clear enough, a man with shorter hair and a different name printed beneath his face. But the eyes were the same. The jawline was the same. The smile that had made me feel so safe was the same. "His real name is Milos," Renata said. "He's connected to at least 4 other disappearances." I felt like the floor was tilting beneath me. 4 other women, women like me, women who thought they had met someone wonderful, women who trusted him. "I need you to stay back here," Renata said. "Don't go back to your seat. We land in less than an hour, and it's safer if he doesn't suspect anything. If you go back now and act different, he might realize something is wrong. I don't want him to panic while we're still in the air." I nodded slowly. I understood. I didn't want to go back to that seat anyway. I couldn't imagine sitting next to him now, pretending everything was fine, feeling his shoulder brush against mine. Renata opened the door and checked the aisle. "Stay here," she said. "I'll come back when we begin our descent." Then she was gone, and I was alone in that tiny bathroom, staring at the locked door, trying to process the fact that the man I thought I was falling for had been planning to destroy my life. I stayed in that bathroom for nearly 40 minutes. It was the longest 40 minutes of my entire life. The space was so small I could barely move, but I didn't care. I pressed my back against the wall and tried to breathe slowly, counting each inhale and exhale to keep myself from falling apart. Every sound made me flinch. The ding of the seatbelt sign, the muffled announcements from the captain, footsteps passing by in the aisle. Each time someone walked past the door, my heart stopped. I kept imagining Dominic getting up to check on me. I kept picturing him knocking on the door, asking if I was okay, his voice sweet and concerned, while something dark lurked behind his eyes. I thought about all the moments we had shared over the past 10 days, the way he laughed at my jokes, the way he held my hand when we walked through the streets of Porto at night, the way he looked at me across the table at dinner, like I was the most important person in the world. It had all felt so real, so genuine, and now I had to accept that every single second of it had been a performance. He had been studying me, learning my patterns, figuring out how to make me trust him completely. I was never his girlfriend. I was his target. A soft knock came at the door and I nearly jumped, out of my skin. Then I heard Renata's voice, low and calm. "It's me. We're starting our descent." I unlocked the door with shaking hands. Renata slipped inside one more time, her face serious but reassuring. She told me the captain had confirmed that police were waiting on the ground. Everything was in place. All I had to do was walk off the plane when we landed and let the officers handle the rest. "Stay behind me when we exit," she said. "Don't look at him. Don't engage with him. Just keep walking toward the door and I'll make sure you get to the authorities safely." "What if he tries to stop me?" I asked. "He won't get the chance," she said. "Trust me." I nodded, even though my whole body was trembling. Renata gave my arm a gentle squeeze, then left to prepare for landing. I stayed in the bathroom until I felt the plane begin its final descent. The pressure in my ears changed. The engines shifted. I gripped the edge of the sink and told myself over and over that I just had to survive the next few minutes. When the wheels finally hit the runway, I let out a breath I didn't know I had been holding. The plane slowed down, taxied toward the gate, and came to a stop. I heard the seatbelt sign ding off. I heard passengers starting to stand, gathering their bags, talking about their plans in Barcelona. Normal sounds, everyday sounds. But nothing about this moment was normal for me. Renata opened the bathroom door and gestured for me to follow her. We moved through the small galley toward the front of the plane. Passengers were crowding the aisle, pulling down luggage, checking their phones. I kept my head down and stayed close behind Renata, trying to make myself invisible. Then I saw him. Dominic was standing near our row, looking around with a confused expression. His bag was in his hand. His eyes scanned the crowd, searching. When he spotted me walking from the back of the plane, his face changed. The confusion melted away, replaced by something hard and cold. He knew. Somehow he knew something was wrong. He pushed past a man reaching for his suitcase and started moving toward me. His steps were quick, his jaw tight. He called my name, but I didn't answer. I just kept walking, my eyes fixed on the open cabin door ahead. Renata grabbed my arm and pulled me forward. We reached the exit, and she pushed me gently but firmly onto the jet bridge. The air outside the plane was cool and smelled like fuel. I stumbled forward and found myself surrounded by uniformed officers. One of them stepped in front of me, blocking the path back to the plane. Another took my arm and guided me aside, asking if I was okay. I turned around just in time to see Dominic reach the doorway. His face was twisted with anger. He tried to step off the plane, but two officers grabbed him before his feet touched the jet bridge. He struggled against them, shouting my name, telling them there had been a mistake, that I was his girlfriend, and he didn't understand what was happening. They didn't. Listen. They forced his arms behind his back and pulled him away from the exit. He kept shouting, kept fighting, but it didn't matter. They had him. The last thing I saw before they took him around the corner was his face. Not the charming smile I had fallen for, not the warm eyes that made me feel special, just cold, empty rage. The face of a man who had lost control of his prey. The hours after they took him away blurred together in a haze of fluorescent lights and unfamiliar faces. Police officers escorted me to a small room inside the Barcelona airport where investigators asked me questions for what felt like forever. They wanted to know everything, how we met, where we went, what he told me about himself. I answered as best I could, but my voice kept breaking. Every detail I shared reminded me how completely I had been fooled. They told me more about the man I knew as Dominic. His real name was Milos Vranic. He had been on Interpol's radar for 3 years, connected to a trafficking network that operated across multiple countries. They believed he was responsible for the disappearances of at least 4 other young women, all of them solo travelers, all of them lured in by the same charming routine. 2 had been recovered. 2 were still missing. I would have been number 5. Hearing that broke something inside me. I kept thinking about those women. Did they sit across from him at dinner, laughing at his jokes? Did they text their sisters about the amazing guy they met? Did they feel as lucky as I did right up until the moment everything fell apart? A victim services coordinator sat with me after the interview. She was a soft-spoken woman named Lucia, who brought me tea and didn't rush me to talk. She explained what would happen next with the investigation and gave me resources for support when I got home. She told me that what happened wasn't my fault. He was a professional, she said. His whole purpose was to make women trust him. You did nothing wrong. I wanted to believe her. Part of me still blamed myself for being so naive, but I held on to her words anyway, hoping that someday they would feel true. I called my mom from a quiet corner of the airport. It was early morning back in Ohio, but she answered on the second ring like she had been waiting by the phone. The moment I heard her voice, I started crying. I told her everything through broken sobs, stumbling over words, struggling to explain how the man I thought was wonderful had turned out to be a monster. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You're alive. That's all that matters. You're coming home." Talia flew to Barcelona the next day. She walked into the airport hotel where I was staying, dropped her bags on the floor, and wrapped her arms around me so tight I could barely breathe. She didn't ask questions right away. She just held me and let me cry until I didn't have any tears left. We flew back to the States together. She held my hand during takeoff and refused to let go. Even after we reached cruising altitude, I didn't sleep at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the charming smile, the cold rage when they grabbed him at the door. I knew those images would stay with me for a long time. The months that followed were hard. I went back to work, but everything felt different. I jumped at sudden noises. I had trouble sleeping. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in trauma, and slowly, week by week, I began to feel like myself again, not the same self I was before. That version of me was gone, but a new version, stronger and more careful, started to take her place. I think about Renata almost every day, a woman I had never met, who owed me nothing, who could have looked the other way and let me walk off that plane into whatever fate Milos had planned. Instead, she risked her job and her safety to warn me. She pushed past my confusion and kept trying until I finally listened. I never got to thank her properly. The airline wouldn't give me her contact information for privacy reasons, but I wrote a letter describing what she did and sent it to the company, hoping it would find its way to her. I hope she knows she saved my life. I hope she understands that because of her, I got to come home to my parents and my sister and my little apartment in Seattle. I got to hug my mom again. I got to watch Talia graduate. I got to keep living. I travel differently now. I check in with my family constantly. I don't share my plans with strangers. I listen to my instincts, even when they don't make logical sense. Some people might say I lost something, that I'm more guarded than I used to be. Maybe that's true. But I also gained something important. I learned that evil doesn't always look evil. Sometimes it looks like a warm smile and a perfect date. And I learned that kindness from a stranger can change everything. Renata saw something wrong and refused to stay silent. I'm alive because she trusted her gut and acted on it. I will never forget that lesson. If you want more stories, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from.